Greetings. It's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the meeting of the 90 Washington Civic Advisory Committee. Tonight, we will be interviewing two teams of applicants that responded to the 90 Washington request for proposals for the 4-acre site at 90 Washington Street in East Somerville. We'll start with a roll call of members and then a very quick introduction of our representatives from our real estate consultants, HR&A Associates. I am Ted Fields. I'm with the Economic Development Division, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ben Demers, also from the Economic Development Division. Let's start with roll call. As I said, Bill Mahaney, are you present?
Present, yes.
Joanir D'Oliveira, are you present?
Present.
William Valletta, are you present?
Here.
Councillor Ben Wheeler, are you present?
Here.
Lindsay Allen, are you present?
Present.
And Paolo DeFabio, are you present?
Present. Catch him.
Excellent. Thank you. Nick Hughes, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yep, of course. Hi, everyone. Nick Hughes. I'm a director with HR&A Advisors, a real estate and economic development consulting firm. I'm based out of New York, but I've been supporting the city of Somerville on 90 Washington from the beginning. Great to meet you all.
Thank you, Nick. Just a reminder that this meeting, a webinar, is being recorded for informational purposes. And I'd also like to welcome Alexander Taylor. Alex, are you present?
I sure am.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Ben, how about you start us off with the interview process?
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you, Ted. Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep things very brief, just so that we can hop into things since we have a lot to get through this evening. So just to give a structure of the evening, we're going to have an hour for each of the two interviews that we have this evening. So the first will be with Wood Partners, a few members you can see here on the screen, and then the second will be with the North River Lyric team. So we just did kind of the introduction. Generally, the flow for each of these hours is going to be 20 to 25 minutes of presentation, and then we have kind of 20 to 25 minutes for questions from CAC members. We have shared those questions with CAC members and with the interview teams ahead of time, so kind of everybody knows the questions that will be flowing through. I'm going to try to MC us and keep us on track just because of the time constraints this evening. So if there is a moment where we've assigned something to somebody who is not here for any reason, I'll just hop in and I'll ask that question. The other thing to note is if there is any time left at the end, then we can kind of open things up to other questions from CAC members beyond the ones that we prepared. And we'll maybe try to take like a 2-minute break in between the two sessions, just to let people move around since we'll be on for 2 hours. JR.
As far as the questions, I didn't save the questions anywhere that I could easily. Would you be able to share that? So.
Sure. So in the material that Ted shared for the meeting, there should be two attachments, the PDFs with the questions for each of the teams.
That'll be an email?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
They're also in the chat too, that you should be able to see them in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
But I will say, if anybody has any trouble finding them, etc., I'm happy to just step in. Again, just kind of making sure that we're all a part of the conversation, but also want to keep us moving. I do want to just make a note. It's going to be enough to fit in the questions that the CAC prepared last time. So we are not planning to have public comment, or we're not planning to take public questions for each of the interview teams this evening. So I just want to call that out now. Yeah, Ted, anything else to add before we hop into things?
No, let's get started.
Sounds good. All right, I'm going to pass things over to the Wood Partners team to take things away.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone from the Civic Advisory Committee for being here tonight. Appreciate the time on a great project. Great for the city of Somerville. Looking forward to seeing this one move forward and the opportunity that we have here. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I think you might need to allow me to share my screen, Ben,
Ted can.
or Ted. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It just takes a second to.
Yep.
All right, you should be good now, Quinlan.
Yep. Got it now. Thank you. All right. So go back to the beginning here. All right, and hopefully everybody can see this. Just confirm that everyone got this slide.
Yep.
Perfect. So again, thank you for the time tonight. Appreciate it. Obviously here to discuss 90 Washington Street and the RFP, our response to that RFP. My name's Quinlan Locke. I am the Vice President of Development over at Wood Partners for our regional office in the Northeast. So that covers all of the Northeast, Massachusetts being one of the many states that we cover. So I also joined tonight by Jim Lambert, who is the managing director of that office, as well as our architect on the project, PCA, Dave Snell, is also on the call. So just a quick introduction to Wood Partners. So we are a national multifamily developer since 1998. We've developed and constructed over 100,000 units across the U.S. We're really focused on high density residential communities from all the way from suburban garden style all the way up to urban high rise. We are a vertically integrated platform, which means that we have all of development, construction, and asset management all under one umbrella. So we're not going and, getting a third-party GC or third-party asset manager. We do everything in-house, with the exception of design. We have PCA on the call to talk through that. So from start to finish, all the way from, today, all the way through the end of construction, through leasing, everything, we will be a part of the project. We also have the ability, because of that national platform, to navigate changes in economic conditions. I know there were a few questions about that we can go into later on in this call. On the local expertise side, so we've had a local office in New England since 2008 in Lexington, Massachusetts. We've built over 5,000 housing units since then. We've got Boston area leadership in both construction and development who are all based in Lexington, Mass. We've collaborated with all municipalities in Eastern Massachusetts as well as Southern New Hampshire and Rhode Island on several approaches to permitting, building, and delivering multifamily assets. That includes a lot of different permitting pathways, as you can see below. I didn't list all of them out, but just a few of them that I think most of the group will be familiar with. We've got direct experience with Somerville and permitting and zoning processes, so we'll go through our Alta Revolution project in a little bit, which was a Wood Partners project that we designed and built over at Assembly Row. And we do have a track record with local and regional housing policies and sustainable building requirements. That's part of our, construction process. So, when the construction team, they're in the process from the beginning. So they've already reviewed this project. They're in the middle of, gathering all this information just as we are and answering those questions. So, with that, going to the next slide. A few of the projects that we provided in the technical proposal and just a summary of each of them. So each one of these relates in a different way to this RFP. One through one Alta Oxbow, so that was 218 units in Waylands. That was permitted through an RFP process with the city of Waylands. And through that process, we were able to build those 218 units. So that was, very relative to what this site is here. Alta on the Row, so that's one of our most recent projects, built in Worcester, Mass. So that was 370 units. So Worcester, very, transit oriented, dense development in downtown Worcester, that was very successful. Alta French Hill in Marlborough, so 276 units in Marlborough. That project was a 5-story wood frame project in Marlborough. We had ground floor retail activation there, and that was also part of a public-private partnership with the MDEC in Marlborough. So, again, going back to the relationships with the city, and then Alta Revolution, as many of you might be familiar with over at Assembly Row, 329 units, 66 affordable units as part of Somerville's inclusionary housing policy. And that was a joint effort through the Assembly neighborhood zoning. That was really one of the first projects to take flight over there on the housing side. So we're really proud of that project and something that we'll reference a lot through this process. And not to get too far into the weeds on the site, I know everyone's very familiar with it, but here it is again from the RFPs to 90 Washington Street, 4 acres city-owned land, formerly a retail plaza, directly adjacent to the Cobble Hill Apartments, and with the city's eminent domain taking, I won't go into that. I'll let Ben discuss that further if anyone has questions, but. Um, the transit-oriented access is very important here. So we have the new East Somerville Green Line station, which is just a short walk away. We're also, not to further get away from it, but the Orange Line is down at Sullivan Square as well. So that's about a 10-minute walk to Sullivan Square, and then MBT bus service along Washington Street. So really transit-oriented site, and we're very happy with the location and how it's all set up here. So that provides us with this opportunity for growth, right? So this is where we get into the RFP. That opportunity will include new housing, new commercial space, new open space, and new community space. These are all just examples of that in Somerville and how that's provided in Somerville. You have great spaces that have been part of a community process and had a lot of input into those. So, we thought these spaces were really cool and just gives us some ideas on what we could do over at this site. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dave Snell. He's going to walk us through a little bit of the project vision, and what we have designed here, and go through some of the numbers as well. So, Dave, if you're on.
Yep, I'm here.
Yep.
Nice to meet you all. So Dave Snell from PCA. Our office is a stone's throw from this site in Inman Square over here in Cambridge. And so as we looked at this site with our partners at Wood here, we looked at how to create the density on this site in a way that could be economically viable in today's market. And looking at trying to get a single building with an integrated parking garage that could deliver on an active public realm along Washington Street, and especially at the corner of Washington and New Washington, while hiding all of the project's parking and service from view. What you'll note is that between our site and the Cobble Hill site, we maintain an access driveway that gives us part of a buffer between our project and the existing community. It also maintains some access that they currently have today, integrates a tree-lined buffer to, again, give space and access and keep everything clean there at that edge. The building itself fronts outward with residential uses. Everything you see in the orange color here would be all housing units, including along New Washington Street. We can imagine units at grade activating that street, some nice green space wrapping around. In lieu of a full enclosed courtyard, we have a small courtyard with a pool. It's thought to be at this interior area on New Washington Street, and what that is able to do is provide some outdoor space for our residents while also holding the building back from the street, so that it gives some nice breathing room along New Washington Street. Gives us the ability to do a good amount of green space to enhance the pedestrian circulation on that street. Coming around to the corner, pulling the building back to create a new open plaza with new retail use at that edge. You could imagine that being restaurants or cafes, and there's a lot of different ways that I think we could treat that corner to make it an active and inviting place. How we would shape the building at that end. Obviously, this is more of a diagrammatic massing for this project, but our firm is really prides ourselves in how we're thoughtfully integrating the retail uses with the public realm and trying to really make active spaces that enliven the community. So this entire ground floor along Washington Street is thought to do just that between our retail, between our lobby and amenity space, which you could imagine active uses like a fitness center on the street, our community room shown in blue here, which is a great space that the community could take part of and a new asset, and then additional retail at the other edge. And the way the building kind of steps along the street, the idea is creating much wider sidewalks for the ability for program to spill out there. So we see a lot of opportunity. Of course, lots of refinements to be made about how this could work, and want to hear certainly from you all and the other people who are part of this process. We're excited to get more and more feedback to make this something that Somerville really feels right here. If you go to the next page up, Quinlan, this so this is just again kind of a shot from the intersection of Washington and New Washington, and this plaza on the corner. And again, how that would be articulated, I think our intention is that it's a place that feels comfortable. It's a place that is activated by maybe food uses on that edge, indoor outdoor seating, to create some vibrancy along the street, our lobby and different things to extend that language down Washington Street. And then ultimately the building and the mass above, the way in which we have it oriented towards Washington Street, it reads as a series of buildings as you're moving along the street. And that's intentional. We have courtyards that are held back from the edge, pulling the main residential mass inwards so that you have these pockets of green on the second level that really help to break down the scale. And, I think when we would articulate this beyond a massing view, you would see a lot of thoughtful proportions when you feel that. But the nice idea that this is not a wall along Washington Street, but it's actually has a lot of movement, gives a lot of opportunity for us to sculpt and do something nice here. The other thing I just wanted to flag, which I didn't say on the plan on the previous page, but maybe we could note, Quinlan, if we flip back, is that there is a portion of land that we suggest, and it's to the right there, suggest donating back to the city, and maybe that could be some kind of a public park of some kind. That's a really tight pinch of the site. It's difficult to to use that, but it's certainly a good space that you could imagine a dog park, or you could imagine a lot of other community assets to be used in a space like that. So we'd love to find a way to put that back in the city's hands as part of the project. So happy to hit on anything else, Quinlan, that you want me to get at. Otherwise, oh yeah, actually, this is a good one. So this is an aerial. This kind of gets to how the building steps back on the street. And again, when you're looking from the air, things look bigger than how they get perceived on the ground. So I think really how the building steps back from the street and comes in and out will allow us to make it read as multiple buildings and not a continuous street wall. The green space on the plazas, the elevated plazas, overlooking the street, we think could be really welcoming spaces for our residents. And then you can see at the top, the hidden garage. It's not visible from view anywhere. Everything presenting outwards to the community, our residences, and people's homes. Now we did hear comments about the garage, which I think our team is committed to exploring. That questions about the parking ratio, which we're happy to talk about, and how much space on site it takes. This is the smallest footprint of an efficient precast garage that can allow us to increase the density of residential and have a good amount of parking. And there are other ways which we're happy to talk about. So the I think that's all that. Uh,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks, Dave. And just to reiterate, we have not only from the CAC, but from others heard a, a lot of comments about the project, which is great, and we're hoping to hear more and get more feedback and answer more questions tonight. But one of the ones that continued to come up was the parking, both the ratio being too high and the precast garage taking up too much of the site. So those are things we are committed to exploring solutions on. That will be part of our best and final offer as we approach that phase of this process. So we just wanted to put that out there, make sure everyone's aware of that. But again, we want to hear all your questions. We want to answer all your comments tonight based on this design and take that and move forward and through the process to look at answering those questions. So with that, zoning and approvals timeline. So really what we're proposing here is to rezone this to a high-rise district or an HR special district, if that makes more sense. And what that does is it applies, citywide framework that is currently being used and aligns with city policies to this site instead of creating new ones. So that specific district provides with enough flexibility without relying on the need for relief to go back to, multiple hearings, zoning boards or planning boards to make sure that this project works. So that is the district guidelines that we would use to move this process forward. That would allow us, once a rezoning is in place, to go through a site plan review process. So that process, for those not familiar with it, would include urban design review that focuses on massing, facade articulation. There will be planning board review to go over through the site layout, site circulation, utilities, and that process also allows for various city departments to be a part of it and comment on this project as it moves forward. For a timeline, this is a general timeline of what we believe we can get done. Starting with the developer selection that will happen July 1st. That would take us into pre-development due diligence process, zoning and entitlements happening in the fall and the spring of next year. And then transaction financing happening at the end of the summer and early fall of 2027, with construction beginning in late 2027 and going through 2030. So that pathway, that permitting path seems to work in regards to what we know and have done in the past regarding these processes. So that's a path we're very comfortable with the timeline on. And then the construction process. So as we mentioned at the beginning, all of our projects that we work on from start to finish, the plan is for us to permit, entitle, construct, and deliver these projects. So we're thinking about, how do we construct these processes all the way from now until we put a shovel in the ground. So the general contractor at Wood Partners fully integrated at the start of these projects. They are actively planning and pricing this project so that we can come up with the best solutions to make sure we're, have the best financial return to the city, but also can ensure that we can actually get this project done. Single point of contact at Wood Partners. So again, having one entity as part of both development and construction, that gives confidence that anyone can reach out to us at any time. On the development side, when we get into construction, there'll be a point of contact there as well. So, but that process is all one entity. So, you're not reaching out to 5 different groups asking for, comments or suggestions. There will be upfront construction management planning as well as with any project. So durations, typical work hours, planning for disruptions, etc. And then providing routine updates is also very important. If there is a preferred method from the community, we're happy to do that. But attendance at regularly scheduled meetings, providing email updates, all of these things are things we're very familiar with and happy to do. Advance notices, with all construction, there's always, sidewalk closures or roadway closures for utility interruptions and things like that. So, advance notice to those community groups, making sure that everyone is aware of that up front is very important to us. And then closing the loop. This is something that's not really talked about a ton in the construction process. A lot of times we'll get comments or feedback or, get inquiries in the construction site. Maybe something gets resolved, but there isn't a close the loop at the end of that. So that's something we pride ourselves on, making sure we circle back to wherever that inquiry, came from, make sure that the solution that we came up with is appropriate and implemented, and that, we're closing that loop out when we get there. So we do that from start to finish, all the way from development into construction and through stabilization. So what's next? I know Ben has reviewed this with the team a few times now at the CAC. So right now, April 20th to May 11th, this is the RFP review period. So, we'll be attending meetings, hearings, answering questions, gathering feedback and recommendations on this proposal. That will lead to us, coming up with a best and final offer, which is May 20th to June 26th. We'll integrate all the recommendations and feedback that we can into that proposal and submit a best and final offer back. And then a developer will get selected on July 1st. If that developer happens to be us, we would immediately begin that rezoning process with the City of Somerville planning staff. That would involve community meetings, additional community meetings, to ensure that that process is running smoothly. We would align that schedule with the city staff, the CAC, the SRA, and continuously provide updates on that process and how it's going. And then we would begin the search for potential ground level retail and commercial tenants, as Dave mentioned previously. And with that, I'll pause there, turn it back over to Ben and Ted, and we're happy to answer any questions and feedback and take down any feedback that the CAC has for us. So again, appreciate the time tonight and looking forward to working with everyone.
Great. Thank you, Quinlan. That was perfectly 20 minutes, so that's great. So we had shared the questions ahead of time. So the first one, I'm going to hand things over to Paolo to ask.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you so much for the presentation on this. The process of redevelopment for 90 Washington has involved significant public engagement to date, and the city expects that selected developer will continue this commitment. You sort of alluded to it at the end of the presentation. So that's going to include ongoing engagement with the Civic Advisory Committee. Can you elaborate a bit more on your team's experience with community engagement and how you might approach engagement for this particular project?
Yeah, absolutely. Working with the CAC is something that we, right when this RFP came out, we knew we would have to do and we'd be willing to do through this process. That work is going to have to be ongoing attendance at any scheduled meetings and answering questions, providing our contact information directly to you guys. So mine specifically, if this project does move forward and we are selected, it will likely be me being the main point of contact, and I will try my best to answer every single question and gather every single piece of feedback I can. But if I don't know the answers, I will go find someone that does as well. So, I will be the point of contact. I will be the one attending meetings, whether they're in person, virtual, wherever they are, through this whole process, and ensure that my availability is upfront. Just for background, I was born and raised in Charlestown, right across the bridge, and I went to school at Somerville Charter School, which is now Frost Patil Academy. So I drove past this site my entire life. I know it very well. And it means a lot to me to see this become something new. So that's something I really care about and want to see done the right way. So I will be an open book. And I know Jim's on. He could talk through all of our past experience and other projects if he wants. But this is something that we plan to have a full team available for.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Hi, everybody. It's Jim Lambert. As Quinn said, I'm managing director here at Wood Partners. I run the office for New England and in the Northeast. So I'm pleasure to be here tonight. I think Quinn covered it well. I just want to add on, that's not just lip service for what we will do on this project. That's how we've behaved and acted on all of our projects historically. We, unlike, not saying everybody does this, but a lot of developers generally will have their attorneys be the lead in the face of a project through a permitting, and maybe consultants. We haven't done it that way historically. It's always been myself or a vice president of development. In this case, it'll be Quinn, who is alongside an attorney or an architect and an engineer sitting up in front of the room answering questions from board members and community members. We feel that's important that there's a face up front that's actually from the development group and not just from the consulting. The consulting team and the legal team are very important, and they'll carry a lot of that weight. But we do it from an owner standpoint. We feel like it's important to have a direct communication and line of sight during that process, and we've always done it that way, and we just feel it's the right way to do it.
Thank you.
JR.
Thanks for the question.
JR de Oliveira. So this project will also involve working closely with the city staff on each phase of the project. Can you elaborate in your team's experience working with public sector partners?
Yeah, and I might turn it to Jim on this one, just to speak directly to our experience in Somerville. Obviously, we've built in Somerville, and Jim was a part of that process, so I think he could probably speak to that a little better than I.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, having developed, out of this office for Wood Partners, and we've been doing it since 2008. All of our projects require us to work with city staff through the permitting process, but I will say some are more involved than others. Quinn mentioned it early on, but specifically, we've had a couple of recent projects where we've actually transacted with or through purchasing land from a city or a town. And for example, in Wayland, the project, you wouldn't normally equate a project in Wayland with Somerville, but we only make the parallel because that was town-owned land that they rezoned for the purpose of multifamily housing. It was underutilized land for many, many years, not creating any tax revenue, and they rezoned it for multi-housing. Kind of took them a couple of tries. They didn't quite nail it the first time, and over many years we worked hand in hand with them, and ultimately were able to purchase that land from the town, create the value that they were looking for, build a beautiful project that has now been fully completed and built up. And so that was an intense public-private partnership. And then more recently, we have a project in Marlborough that we purchased. We actually had to acquire several different parcels, so it was an assembly, which is always difficult. But a big chunk of that land was actually owned by the Marlborough Economic Development Committee that they had been given prior by the city of Marlborough in order to dispose of it for the purpose of a redevelopment. They had been wanting to get that project done in some form or fashion for over 30 years, according to them. We were able to come in and assemble the land, work with the city closely, and get that project out of the ground. So those are just two recent examples of working directly with city municipal folks who, and in those cases, actually own the land and were selling the land, which is really unique, but obviously pertinent to this situation. And then again, on all of our projects, whether we're rezoning or just going through like a simple site plan approval, we're always working with planning staff or zoning staff. Our history there in Somerville on the project in assembly was under the former head of planning, George Proakis at the time, and his staff. And we had a great experience going through that process. I would think whoever might still be there hopefully would speak highly of our process there. And same on the construction side from the building department. I think I like to think that we showed a great deal of professionalism and an ability to work with the city staff throughout that process on both sides.
Okay, I think number three. So Shelley Calder, thank you for the presentation. So our question was around the shifting financial markets, which you mentioned weathering some storms in the beginning of your presentation. But with the shifting markets with COVID-19 pandemic, it really highlighted the need for resilient funding sources for new development. Can you provide some examples of how your team has weathered these financial shocks and in the past, and how you're positioned to do this going forward?
Yeah, I think I'll again turn
Yeah,
it over to Jim.
I'll jump in on that. Yeah, Shelley, great question. Thank you. So, being a development firm that's been around since 1997, we've been through a lot of ups and downs in the economy, and we're still here, and we're one of the companies in the country that builds the most housing on an annual basis. And that's not by mistake, right? That's intentional. We understand that there's going to be ups and downs and highs and lows, and our strategy is always just to build right through them because you can never predict when they're going to happen either way. you don't know when things are going to get better, when the chips are down, and you don't know when the shoe's going to drop when, when we're all riding high. So our strategy has always been to develop right through that. And I think more specifically to your question, I can point to the year or two after coming out of the COVID-19 situation where we actually, started more projects than anybody in the state because we had kept spending money during that really uncertain period of time on permitting deals and designing those projects and having them ready to go. And the way we do that really is by having really good financial partners that believe in us. They believe in the project that we've underwritten. There's room in them generally that we can weather that storm. And we have proven time and time and again that we have built through all economic waves, and what that leads to is some really good financial returns and some that are not so good. But we just have learned that we're not in the prediction business. We're doing our best to just try to permit projects and get them in the ground and work through whatever might come in front of us. But we started 4 projects in 2024, and as it's a long process before you can put a shovel in the ground here in Massachusetts to get projects permitted and designed and to the point where you can put a shovel in the ground. So if you back that up, we were working on all those projects right through COVID, often, some of them before COVID that we held on to, where others were letting them go, and ultimately got 4 projects in the ground that year, which were a direct result of keeping those warm and advancing them during that really difficult period.
Super. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm Lindsay Allen. I was wondering if you could elaborate on your retail strategy for any proposed ground floor retail, and specifically tell us a little bit more about your business outreach and how new uses would complement the existing retail spaces that are already there along Washington, and how you would encourage smaller and local businesses.
Quinn, do you want to go or?
Yeah. So,
Or I'll jump in.
well, I'll start with what we've done to date, which is very preliminary. So basically, we've reached out to a few local retail brokers, who work with tenants, not only in Somerville but in the region. And so we've reached out to them, provided them, what would be our plan set, and said, hey, we have this location in Somerville that we're working on. Are there tenants that would want to go here, and what would they want? So, the response really was, outside of parking needs, which is a whole nother thing. The tenants that you're going to want here are usually going to be food services. Those are going to be the ones who are interested in this project. So food services, cafes, restaurants is definitely one. And then, neighborhood needs. So, in a lot of these multifamily projects, it's, you could slip in, an urgent care or pharmacy or something like that, a neighborhood need. So that's the type of feedback we've been getting from retail brokers, on who would actually go here. Now, there are other options. There are other things that we can do in here to make sure that, that retail can accommodate whatever the neighborhood wants it to be. So if there is like a dire need for something, we can look to see what we can do in the building footprint to alter that retail. So if you notice, we had kind of 2 corners of retail. We wanted to activate each corner of the building. But if there are users that are interested in the property that want that extra square footage, we can always shift that square footage to the other side and give them more, if that's what they want. So, the building, and Dave can talk to this, is really designed to accommodate a plethora of retail users. We just want to make sure we're targeting the users that would want to be here as well. So, Jim, Dave, you can feel
Yeah,
free
I
to
just
add
want
to
to,
that.
thanks, Quinn. I just want to jump in and give an example. So our project right now that we've got in Marlboro, Alta French Hill, has ground floor retail. And to your question, Lindsay, about I think local or small business, We actually have some two really good tenants that we've signed up there, and we're working on a third. They're great uses. One is an independent coffee shop that is on their third location that's taking one of the main corners. And then the second is a really cool use that we're excited about that we're about to sign the lease to. That I can't say the name of the group, but it's a startup, and they're doing a bookstore and wine shop combination. And so we just think that's a really cool use. And then we're talking to a restaurant for the third space. So if we can find that full service restaurant, we'll have full service restaurant, wine and bookstore, coffee shop, and which is really good placemaking for that project. And I would add we also did a work from home space there that's open to both residents of the building and to the public. And so that would sort of round out that retail frontage in that project. And that's a good recent example of us putting together, non-franchise chain uses. Not that that's never the right answer, but in that case, we felt like those were the better fits. That project runs right along a rail trail. It's a great opportunity to have people come and use that rail trail for walks or bike rides, and then visit the local retailers. And that's still coming to life right now, but we've got those users locked down. We're really excited about it. It's just to give an example of a recent experience that we have with the retail.
I'll just add like two small points, which is one, our firm has done a ton of retail all around in buildings like this and standalone. And so we understand the requirements of retailers. And so what Jim is talking about, those kinds of uses, you need to plan for those in advance. If you want a restaurant, you have to put in the infrastructure for it. If you want certain retailers, you need to understand the depths and proportion of space that are most likely to attract them. So the nice thing is about the sizes that we're doing are spaces that could be subdivided, as Quinlan mentioned, we could move things around, especially at this early time, so that you could get, if we wanted a larger user, if we wanted a larger restaurant that could fit, and if we wanted to get a handful of smaller local businesses, within, smaller, skinnier spaces, that could work too. And so early conversations about this and what we would learn through this process would really help to inform what's the infrastructure we're putting in place, so that we can never guarantee what happens in a leasing environment, but we can set ourselves up for success through design.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Valletta, I think next one is yours.
Yeah, I was interested. I was listening so closely to the discussion already, which is largely spoken to the question that I was about to ask, which is how you're reading the trends in the market as far as retail is concerned. I mean, from our perspective, things are awfully soft here in Somerville at this point, and those of us who live in the neighborhood here, have a perception that or at least as the population and the working population stands as of now, the opportunity to find enough customers to keep retail, going and profitable in this particular corner of Somerville is a little difficult. So unless you have kind of more specific to say about, our situation here, again, the question is, how are you reading the trends?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot to add specifically, but yeah, your point is well taken. I mean, again, I think we are finding in certain pockets that there is, as I just mentioned in Marlboro, we're having success
Mhm.
attracting tenants. But in other places where there may be, more options, it becomes more difficult because it's harder to, get that customer share. And obviously, we're living in a world with DoorDash and things like that, and people have the ability to get their food if it's food from really almost anywhere within a decent radius. So it gets tougher and tougher for sure. And I think one way that we can combat that is by not underwriting a really high level of rent, for example. And so we've got to effectively subsidize a local user by having, a lower rent that we don't have to achieve to make the project financially viable, for example. It's just one way, but.
Thank you. Bill Mahaney. Bill, you are still muted. There you go.
Unmuted.
Yes.
This is a two-part question. First, can you tell us more about the logic behind the parking ratio you have proposed? The other part is, what would allow you to lower the parking ratio? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I kind of alluded to this, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on this one particular item. So it is something that we are going to look into. First on on the current design. So, we have found in a lot of our projects that we've done in the area that a precast garage is the most effective way to keep the costs down for construction while providing the most value for land. So that's where we started here. That precast garage that we have in there, self-admittedly is probably too much parking. The real reason for that is because we don't know what that retail is going to be or if they're going to require any parking. But nonetheless, I think we tends to agree on our ends that a lower ratio, is needed here. So that's something that we are going to work to bring down. And for that exact design as well, the concept there was that if we didn't need those parking spaces, that ratio that we're currently showing, we could eliminate levels of that garage pretty easily from design in order to get to that lower ratio. So that was always an option for us, is to be able to reduce that. Now, on the other end, there are other issues with parking that we are aware of, which is that it takes up a ton of the site. So, I think instead of just kind of saying to the group here tonight, hey, we're just going to eliminate floors of that garage. I think we're really going to actually study how we can, one, take that ratio down lower below to a 1.0 below that too. And then two, what can we do with that parking that's not a structured garage, right? So there are other options out there. They are more expensive. They do cost, money to do, but if you're providing a lower ratio, maybe that works financially and we can end up making that work. So a lower ratio and a different setup for the parking are things we are definitely going to explore. Not confident where that's going to be. It will look like a program similar to this. The building will, still be, this general size and scale. But, if we can kind of hide that parking and reduce the ratio down to a number that is more appropriate for the city of Somerville, I think that's a win for everyone. So those are things we're going to be looking into. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything to
I
add to that.
just want to add, I mean, I think you nailed it, but I just want to add one point that's worth at least um, some consideration. So, the other option is obviously to go with underground parking, which certainly opens up some of the site. As Quinn mentioned, that is much more expensive than the approach that we're taking. And so we're trying to balance the ability to offer the highest land price that we could. And, with obviously the design criteria. Um, there is, our understanding is there is, potentially some contamination and things in the soil. So that's something to take, if you've got to truck that soil off site, that adds to the cost as well. It's not just that simply, building the parking itself underground. There are soil, issues that you have to always account for anytime that you're doing that. So again, we're open to all solutions. There's pros and cons of each. I mean, there's going underground opens up the site more, but costs more. And so we're trying to, figure out sort of what the most important thing is for this process, and we can react accordingly. But we're more than willing to be flexible on our approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I will jump in with my question. I'm Councilor Ben Wheeler. Thanks so much for this presentation, Quinlan and Jim and all the team. So my question is, are there possibilities to include a greater number of residential units total? And possibly separate question, possibly related, is there a possibility to have a higher proportion of income restricted housing or have the number of units available at deeper levels of affordability? Thanks.
Counselor, thank you. Quinn, I'll start and you can jump in. So, yes, I mean, there's opportunities to look at all those things just to hit them separately. So, on unit count, there's a couple of different ways we can approach that. One is we can look at an additional story on these buildings. So, we're at 7, 8 is the max that you can go to with wood frame construction. That gets tricky in terms of like the height maximum, and Dave can speak to that. But we did build an 8-story wood frame over podium at Assembly, so we're very familiar with that product type. You just have to make sure that you're able to do it under the height restrictions in the building code. It's not a local code; it's a building code issue. But that's one avenue. Another thing that we've looked at just very preliminarily is that extra piece of land that we were talking about providing back or making into some sort of park. In theory, could be, a small building that could add some units over there. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but we had at least brainstormed that being an option to get the unit count up. So that is an option as well. And then if we did adjust the parking approach, that likely would, yield some additional units just from the simple having more availability of the site. So we have multiple avenues that we can do that, and we're prepared to take another look at that. And then, sorry, to your question on affordability, yeah. So again, it all comes down to the math, right? So it's weighing what we can offer for the site, versus um, trying to make decisions on all these things. How are you parking? How much are you parking? What's your affordability component? What's your affordability levels? But we've done that in the past. We've done projects that had 80% and 60% AMI. I believe we did that on our project there. So we're accustomed to that. We're open to that. I think again, it's just a balance, and I think we would like to understand from this committee and also from the city on what the priorities are, and then we can adjust that accordingly. Because I think everybody can appreciate, right? If you're adding more affordability, your income's lower. Your income's lower. Your what you can offer for the land's lower. So it's really a balance, but it's certainly not something that we are against by any means. It's just a matter of trying to balance it out and what the priorities are.
Yeah, and just to build off that a little more, counselor. So, this project, as it's currently stands and as it will stand in a best and final offer, is meeting all of the city's inclusionary housing policies. So we do have tiers of affordable rents. The tier 1, 2, and 3 affordable rents. So those are included in this process as well as the 20% affordable. So no matter what in the best and final offer, we will be meeting that. So just to reiterate that, want to make sure that was clear. Thank you for the question.
Anecdotally, I think we were actually the first group that got a project out of the ground under the 20% inclusionary policy that was implemented several years ago. I believe that's the case, and I also think we were the first company to build an 8-story wood frame in the state with that same project. So we had some first there in Somerville.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I would love to ask follow-up questions, but I'm going to stick with the process. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are essentially at time. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and given that we're on for 2 hours this evening, it might be nice to just take a quick break in between. Just want to get a general consensus from CSC members. Is there any question that's like someone's dying to ask, or does it feel okay if we culminate here?
We're available after this meeting too. So if anyone wants to reach out to us, we are here.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All
Okay.
right. I don't see any more questions, Ben, do you?
No.
All right.
Great. Well, thank y'all, Jim, Quinlan, Dave, for joining us this evening. Really appreciate the presentation and for engaging with everyone's questions.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, members. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
We're excited about this project. thanks for including us.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, for CAC members, why don't we take like let's say 2-3 minutes to just move slightly. I think it's good on these 2-hour sessions, and then we'll come back together for the North River Learing presentation. Bill, we can go back to our calisthenics.
Great.
Maria, I see that you're speaking, but you're muted. I just want to make sure it's not to me.
Yeah, I'm
When you muted, I know there was an echo before, but when you muted, the sound fully cut.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you, Sarah. Yes.
can you hear me also, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're just
Are you in the same room? Yeah. Okay.
and Blake, you're signed in as Murray Fisher,
Oh, really? Look at that.
which I mean, you know, I'm okay with that.
You have a doppelganger.
Oh, there's another.
And now there's another. You should be able to rename, like I think that, yeah, so if you're using the same link, everyone should be able to rename individually.
It's like
rename. Yep, I'll do that right now.
A lot of Murray Fishers on this call.
Doug
Old-
too. I love it.
Yeah, so far. Another.
I knew Doug was lurking somewhere back there.
How's that?
In the 4 years of COVID Zooming, I've never had to do this.
It happens if the same panelist link goes to multiple people rather than everyone being added individually.
Got it.
Wait, what do we do? Do we get to change our?
You might have to.
You can be Murray for the night.
No, I would. I mean, let's take a moment to maybe change.
Really?
How do you do it?
You getting uncomfortable? You getting uncomfortable?
I don't love it.
How do you do that?
Click on the little name on the screen, and then
Laura figured it out. I mean, thank you, Laura.
No worries. Took me a moment, but I figured it out.
Oh, Murray.
If you click on the dot, I think.
Rename.
Yeah.
It's the 3 dots.
Wait a minute.
What's your alias name, Paige?
You want me to go Paige?
And then Ben, I'll be the one sharing the presentation. Should I just put it up now to get it ready while everyone's coming in, or?
Sure.
Okay.
And there are all these, I never knew about this stuff. There's like all kinds of things I can do, like blur my background.
Don't distract yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's easily done. So,
All right, we'll just give another minute as folks are coming back.
Yeah.
And then for CAC members, as you're rejoining, if you want to just come back on camera so that I know that you're there.
J.O.
Awesome. Okay, we have Councilor Wheeler.
Dean William. Over to Shelley. Alex.
Okay, I think we're still waiting on one person, but they should be back in a moment. And just for the sake of time this evening, why don't we go ahead and get started? So gave this disclaimer at the beginning, but just going to give it now for anybody who's joining. So the second of our presentations this evening is from North River Lyric. So we're going to have about an hour, a little under, for that presentation. So we're expecting about 20 to 25 minutes for the actual presentation, and then we will move into 25 to 30 minutes of Q&A. So with that, I'm going to keep things brief and just hand things over to Sarah and Murray.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ben. We're really grateful to have the opportunity to present, and we're just going to start out by introducing our team, and so I'm going to pass it over to Chris Pacious to get us started from North River Lyric.
Thank you, Murray, and thank you all for the time this evening. We have an hour, so I'll probably speak for about 50 minutes, but we'll keep it brief. We have been investing in the Somerville market for a couple of decades now, and know some folks on the screen. Most notably, we started with an acquisition in the Innerbelt neighborhood about 13 years ago now, and have since begun acquiring over the last 10 years more assets in the Brick Bottom neighborhood as well, and really throughout sort of this, I would say, kind of, it used to be called the inner suburbs, I guess, now outer urban area, Somerville, Medford, Malden, Chelsea, East Boston, Revere, Lynn. And so we have a real focus, sort of in these neighborhoods close into Boston. We have been quite active on the development front, working with the city, over the last 5 or 6 years, with the construction of the 100 Chestnut building. I've worked quite closely with the neighborhood, and tenants in our buildings, the artists, and of course, with the city as well. General focus, which I think we've reiterated in the past, is very long term. Many projects that we still own and operate throughout New England, Maine, down to New York City. We've owned for many decades, and so when we say we're long-term investors, we mean it. So I think a lot of what you'll hear from Doug, and I'll pass it to Doug now, and from Murray and Sarah, really kind of built off of that, kind of long-term platform, and really integrating, the work that we do into the community. So, with that,
Thanks,
I
Paige.
will pass it to Doug.
You left me with a minute. I'll just quickly go. I mean, we're excited to continue the collaboration and partnership with the city and the evolution of this area. We've had, I think, a lot of productive and good collaborative experiences on the Brick Bottom activity, and thinking about the future of that area. And we see the partnership with the city, and I think the city's vision for this site as just another opportunity to be part of that evolution, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to work together on this. I think at the end of the day, when we saw this opportunity, we thought about the team. We thought, how do we bring together a group of people that we think are really going to work well with the city, with the community, and I think bring a fresh perspective to the problem of being a part of creating a new neighborhood. And we think we have an extraordinary team that we've assembled. And I just want to talk about how excited we are to have Murray and Sarah as part of kind of the leadership of this effort, really taking charge of it, because they embody, I think, what we want you to know about us, and the kind of care and commitment that I think we want to bring to a project like this, in terms of having a project that is successful on many levels. And I think they'll talk a little bit about their own experience, but when we thought about why would we pursue this thing, I mean, at the end of the day, we are absolutely committed to finding a way to make this thing economically successful. But as importantly, We want it to be a great project from an experience perspective for the community and for the city of Somerville to be proud of it and to contribute to the creation of this sort of urban area that I think has tremendous potential and opportunity. And lastly, to be exemplary from an environmental perspective, and use projects like this to continue to advance the opportunities to do projects that I think lead the way in terms of the environmental impact that they can have. Blake and his team at Handel Architects have done projects all over the world, have an enormous portfolio of residential work at all scales. And I think in talking to Blake and the work that we've done together, thinking about how do you create projects that are unique to their site, that are responsible in terms of thinking about the underlying economics and the delivery of a project like this, but frankly, more importantly, that deliver architecture that's right and appropriate for its context, and not just another residential project in our portfolio from an investment perspective, but really how do we leave a legacy of contributing to an urban fabric and a urban environment. And then Scape, who I think is one of the premier landscape firms that thinks about public realm, public spaces, and the kind of ecology of what we're creating. And so again, I just want to reinforce that we've thought really hard about the people, the team, the experience, and the priorities of this project, and we think we've got a great team to present to pursue this project opportunity. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sarah and Murray.
Thank you so much, Doug. Yeah, we're really happy to be here. This is a really exciting moment for me and Sarah. We are both coming from the New York City metro area, but we both have family in Cambridge, so we're happy to have an excuse to get up here. We came up to look at the Somerville, at the Brick Bottom sites that North River has, to help them brainstorm how to maybe incorporate in more community uses, more public-private partnerships, more environmental sustainability. And then thinking about it, looking at it, we also identified this site over at 90 Washington that we got really excited about, that Sarah and I got excited about, and talked to Chris and Doug into taking a look at it too. So I think that it's important to note that my background is that I've been trying to protect the environment for 20 years as a career, starting 2 nonprofits in New York City. And I realized that the biggest threat to the ecological landscapes that I've loved is just continued suburban sprawl. And that what a great opportunity to be part of a team with North River Lyric, who is helping make cities beautiful, livable, with access to nature, schools, all the things that a city can and should deliver will actually make for a healthier place to live, and will sort of reduce the development pressure out into our natural forests and fields and farms. So that's sort of a big driver for us. We want to measure how good a project does by the ecological health of the property, the cultural aspects of the property, and then of course the economic value of the property as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. I'll give you just 2 minutes on my background. I started my career in investment banking, doing infrastructure finance, and then moved into the public sector where I was at the city of New York for a number of years doing infrastructure and public-private partnerships, and then working for Empire State Development for the state equivalent of EDC. So, Murray and I came together around this idea that he just articulated, and we're both really enthusiastic about taking a fresh look at projects just like this, where we can, find great returns for our investors while also building new incredible spaces and infrastructure for cities like Somerville. So really excited.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Blake Middleton. I'm a partner at Handel Architects, and I think Doug's already taken half of my credentials already, so I won't elaborate too much on our background as a firm. We've been in practice for over 30 years, and almost for the same amount of time have been active in Boston and the Boston area. We're really familiar with the civic engagement process, having done a number of Article 80 review projects leading to construction and occupied buildings in downtown Boston. We were involved in probably the five most important buildings that really altered in a positive way and renewed the Midtown Cultural District, which when I was growing up in just outside of Boston was well known as the combat zone. It no longer has that appellation. So we're very proud of the work that we've been doing in that area. We're also actively involved with the Cambridge Housing Authority for Roosevelt Towers, which is not, almost a stone's throw from this site location, and a number of institutional projects around the Boston area next. In addition to that, we've probably built from our designs, over 60,000 apartment units around the country from our designs, and a good portion of which, almost 9,400 of which are affordable units that are built. And I think the highlight of that might be the upper left picture you see there, which is Sendero Verde, which is the largest 100% affordable passive house building in the world in East Harlem, and something that we're very proud of and achieved a lot of recognition. So we're very familiar with the process of building high performance buildings. If we go to the next slide, on a tight budget, and that's our credentials, I think, are second to none in our profession around the country, particularly with these game-changing projects that we've done in Toronto and Boston and New York City and Atlanta. So we're bringing that experience to the table. And I think the passive house discussion is interesting because, as we understand it, Somerville has adopted the Massachusetts opt-in specialized code. These buildings are essentially going to need to meet passive house design certification, and we are very, very good at making that happen for projects of this scale and type. So really looking forward to working with you and all the other stakeholders involved in this project. Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Moret. I'm a principal at Scape Landscape Architecture. And we are a practice working locally and around the country to shape beloved public spaces. We really take an ethos of creating spaces that are ecologically valuable, that are vibrant for people, and that are contributing to the resilience of our cities. A lot of our work, like the images you see on your screen here, this is a project in New York City, First Avenue Water Plaza, are within mixed-use districts. So we love to create spaces that serve both, the immediate residents and the broader community, that are active, that have different qualities of space, places for respite, places for gathering, places for play, as you see in these images. So we're really excited about the opportunity with you all. And then if you look on the next slide, we also have a great deal of experience in Greater Boston. I'm based in Boston, and so I've helped to lead a lot of this work over recent years. But that includes working, with the city of Boston, as well as other municipalities on work from visioning, from climate resilience to implementing and building, beautiful public spaces that serve communities. We're also working, you can see an image in the bottom left, on the Harvard Alston Greenway. This is a partnership with Harvard's Land Company and Tishman Speyer, and engaging the broader community to create a public greenway that goes from the neighborhood of Lower Alston to the river. It's now under construction, so hopefully you can all come and enjoy it this summer. As well as, engagement and design processes with communities around Greater Boston. So, thank you.
You all see me when I'm talking?
No, we see Sarah.
We're going to do a highly technical switcheroo.
You're gonna go off. Okay, you all can see and hear me?
You're good.
Yeah, no
Okay,
echo.
great. Sorry. This is just in response really to what we heard from the city and from the CAC. We really are eager to develop this project in a way that meets the city's needs, the future needs, that adds a lot of value to living and being and working in this neighborhood. Obviously, first, we want to prioritize the density, get as many houses as we can, and obviously as affordable as possible. Secondly, ecologically, that's a big important part for us, which is why we brought in Scape. We want to try to preserve and restore and activate as much of that green space as possible so that people aren't necessarily having to leave the city for nature. We want to try and have access to nature here in the city. We really want to be site specific. We want to develop this piece of property taking into consideration the individual historic, community, ecological, and political realities of the site. Obviously, the transit oriented is really excited for us. These are the kinds of developments that we're really thrilled about, where people will be able to get to the T stop and have on-site car sharing. And finally, the accessibility to the bike path is really amazing. We would love this to be a development where people could walk to do their daily life, their shopping, their retail to the T. And we want that to be a cornerstone of the building and of sort of a new way of being able to live in this district. You're next, Sarah.
I'll just quickly run through what you've seen already in our submittal, but I'm going to turn it over right after this to Blake for some more interesting visuals to go through this. What we're contemplating here is over 400 new housing units with a goal of meeting the 20% affordability.
Oh, Sarah, you muted. Sarah. Sorry, I muted partway.
Do that. A feature of our proposal is to really maximize green space with a central public plaza. And then, of course, retail that will appeal to the residents and also the neighbors. So grocery, dining, cafe. We know that we would love to focus on opportunities for local business owners to find a home here and to keep people on site. We're also striving to respond to the request that there's no above grade parking. And so we're going to try to keep all of our parking below grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next image.
Take over.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as Kim.
It's yours.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I think you're muted.
No, we
I'm
can hear
muted.
him.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right. So I just want to preface this by saying the illustrations you're going to see this evening are certainly the initial concepts that we've been thinking about for the site. And, we imagine all of this evolving as the conversation continues. Our approach really here has been looking at this as an opportunity to create a mixed-use residential enclave that, creates density appropriate to this neighborhood while positively adding to the urban context. So we do this in three ways. This is done by reestablishing the traditional urban street wall on the edges of Washington Street and East Washington Street. New Washington Street. All the residential units are located around the perimeter with all the lobbies and storefronts directly engaging the sidewalk. Second, we have, taken the strategy of creating an active and vibrant central garden space, which has already been mentioned here. This is an outdoor urban room, fully accessible by the public, around which the apartments and a community facility and even some of the retail spaces may be organized. And third is to imbue these buildings with a material vernacular that draws on the brick bottom heritage of masonry walls, metal panels, divided light windows, evocative of all the sort of earlier light industrial building types found nearby, almost like vertical lofts in a sense. The strategy of moving these buildings to the perimeter of the site, we believe, is a win-win in placing the massing along the streets that are active and wide enough to absorb their height. Can we go to the next? And then here, so we can see in this view, this is looking from the southeast, looking towards the northwest. Can we go to the next one, please? Thank you. This is interesting too, because it shows how this massing by sort of moving to the urban edge opens up the center of the block. You'll note on the sort of left-hand portion of the Washington Street facade, this kind of stepping up of scale. So we've intentionally tried to make a kind of contextual relationship in size and character to the Cobble Hill apartment buildings on right nearby. And as it moves towards this concept of stepping up, we've also established a more concentrated density at the corner of the site, and sort of a critical intersection, but we believe it has the capacity to sort of help mark the sort of movement into this neighborhood, but also becomes a kind of prime location for a more vertical expression here. That's a 16-story tower at the corner with a relatively small floor plate. It's a 9-story street wall building along Washington Street, and then it steps down to 6 stories on the south side. Let's go to the next one, please. Um, Part of the challenge with larger buildings like this is sort of breaking down the scale so that it both fits within the neighborhood context, but also alleviates some of uh, the sort of potentiality of larger buildings feeling like they're just continuously endless. And we do that by creating a series of reveals and changing the materiality within the building. So in the mid-rise building that you see on the left. That is sort of using a sort of copper colored standing seam metal on the sort of attic or the top floor, and with a setback and then a series of vertical notches to begin to articulate and give a sense of rhythm to that part of the building complex. You'll see in the center there an archway. That is really celebrating this sort of portal and pedestrian connection between the street and the neighborhood and the urban and the central garden beyond. And the whole goal here is to really enliven the pedestrian experience, particularly along Washington Street, and as it wraps around onto the East Washington Street, New Washington Street. I'm sorry, I keep calling it East Washington. Next, please. Um, this is probably emblematic, I think, of the whole concept of our approach here. By taking the give or take 425 apartments and beginning to wrap them around the perimeter of the site, we can open up the center. What's really interesting is this area of open space. It's has a lot of possible uses and ability to sort of create community, both for the people that live here and for the neighborhood, which Laura will talk about in a second. Well, I think an interesting feature here is this is almost a full acre of open space, concentrated, not dispersed around edges and different small parcels of the site, but actually pulled and focused in the middle of the whole development. A tower sets back away from it. You also notice that the buildings that we see here are 6 stories, which are facing on to the south side of the site. This allows a lot more daylight and sunlight into this space so that the landscaping can really thrive and it really becomes a wonderful place to be. And maybe Laura, you can. Oh wait, let's go with one more slide before we get there. Very quickly, this is a site plan diagram, and this really sort of very, cogently, I think, sort of identifies how the building massing on the ground level begins to embrace that central space, and how different program characteristics, which we've identified with the different colors, the retail space in yellow, community facility in that sort of orange tone, and then the residential components in sort of various shades of blue. Um, uh, yeah, so all of this is sort of creating this sort of focal point, around the center space, and also engaging the Cobble Hill apartment development too, as a way to sort of frame this outdoor space. And Sarah, Laura, would you like to add some more, please?
Yeah, sure. Maybe if you could just toggle back to the image. Thank you. So yeah, we really envision this central garden as a public green that's serving the neighborhood as well as the residents. We think it could embrace many different uses. So there could be, smaller planted nooks that are more kind of quiet, contemplative spaces. We envision a playground for kids and families that could be a part of this, as well as that larger central lawn, which, you know, could be sized and is sized in the view to accommodate pickup soccer, lounging, informal gathering, and a weekend farmers market. So this could really become kind of an active destination for the whole community. And that's really helped by, you can see the cafe kind of food and beverage spaces that wrap, that would create a destination and activity that spills out into the central garden. We, with the kind of ecologically focused ethos, would want to focus on incorporating native plantings looking at the opportunity for rain gardens that could manage stormwater, as well as providing some new tree canopy that could help cool and provide shade, as well as contributing to the urban canopy of the district. And then lastly, for that community space, we've talked about the possibility of a new Earth School that would be an environmental learning center. And this public space could really serve as the outdoor classroom that coincides with that. And that learning center could help with biodiversity monitoring, with ecological land care, really building that capacity for environmental learning within the community. So very exciting to think about the future of this central space.
We go forward, and this is an important illustration diagram just to help everyone understand what we're trying to accomplish here. The red arrows really speak to the public pedestrian access into this central garden space. Really, we're trying to enhance a sense of porosity and connection to the neighborhood, whether that's from the east in the Cobble Hill apartment spaces, outdoor spaces, sort of almost bleeding into this enclave here. And then you can also see in blue, we've tried to identify where the buildings actually service. We have to have off-street loading so that there's no, traffic backing up, trying to, with deliveries and all the rest going on in these buildings. So those are indicated in blue, and the project is predicated from the beginning on below grade parking as a way to accomplish this. And we're studying the possibility of leaving a good portion of that sort of center open space, actually, at least the original grade, sort of, untouched, other than that soil that probably has to be mitigated, and the parking sort of happening around the perimeter of the base of this project. You'll also see some access points, again, with some curb cuts coming in off of both Washington Street and New Washington Street. Next. And then this is a typical upper plan. I think the main thing here is to illustrate that each of the sort of linear portions of the apartment buildings are about, give or take, 23,000 square feet each with their own elevator core. And then the tower has, a fewer number of apartments and a smaller footprint, probably about 9,500 square feet in 15 floors of residential. Again, all of these apartments either open directly onto the street below it or onto the central court space. Next. And if we can, there we go. And so I'm going to wrap up because I'm noticing that we're pretty much at 26 minutes, other than to say we're really excited about the possibilities with this concept and look forward to your questions and answers. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. So we have a number of questions that the CAC members will ask, which were shared ahead of time, and we'll kind of just popcorn between members. So passing this over to Paolo for the first question.
Thanks, Ben, and thank you all for the presentation and the renderings. The process of redevelopment for 90 Washington has involved significant public engagement to date. The city expects the selected developer to continue this commitment, including ongoing engagement with the Civic Advisory Committee. Can you elaborate on your team's experience with community engagement and how you might approach engagement for this particular project?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for the question. And it's absolutely essential to all of our projects, not just here in Somerville, but everywhere we work. And the team collectively, and also each of us individually, has a depth of experience with community engagement. On my side in New York City, working on the expansion of the Javits Center, I ran public board meetings that involved public outreach, and also for Moynihan Station. And Murray can mention you.
Yeah, I'd say that my favorite place to be is engaging in the community. I've started a public school in New York City. Every minute of that for 15 years was working with the community, the parents, the city, the teachers. I loved it. Then I started a nonprofit Billion Oyster Project that relied on working with the community, all the restaurants, property owners, schools, So we yearn to be in relation with people who care. And so we'll spend the time and we'll listen and we'll understand it's not worth doing unless it's something that people can get excited about. That's the way we've always operated.
And
Maybe just
yeah, please piggyback. I was going to ask.
I was going to say, so, and more, specifically and more locally, obviously, we've been, as Chris had mentioned, we've been working in Somerville for really since 2019 on the planning and design of the brick bottom sites that we have. Through that, we've engaged in our own kind of community building and collaboration with the artist community in brick bottom in particular. And then through the Somerville neighborhood planning process, that we obviously were excited to participate in numerous workshops, and then in our own site plan approval and permitting process, the collaboration with the various entities that had interest in what we were doing. And I think hopefully we illustrated a willingness to really listen, be open-minded, collaborate, and most importantly, respond to, I think, in a proactive way, the things that we felt or that we heard were important to people. So I think, I could talk more about my 30 years of experience in design, working with different groups and how we collaborated. But I think again, we talked about was, I think Sarah and Murray, trying to give you a new name, combined name. I think their true community involvement outside of a design project, we think is a really fresh perspective to how we engage. And then I think kind of our local, from a developer and designer perspective, collaborating with the city of Somerville has been really positive. And of course, I think Blake touched on the work that Handel and I know Escape and Laura's team has done, obviously many of their projects being public realm projects, included a lot of community collaboration.
Paolo, I think part of that answer also is it was the how to interact. And um, just a couple of things. One thing I've learned over the years is you need to be clear and transparent and not brush things under the table, so to speak, and to really listen to what people are asking for or what they are asking for, but they're not able to articulate very clearly. And I think the second part is acknowledging them and making them feel heard. Um, I've learned over the years you can't accommodate everybody's desires in the public. It's a challenge all the time, and a number of projects that I've been through over the years are very politically fraught, and it takes leadership. I feel between both with the design team and the city agencies that are shepherding that process, to sort of navigate through all of that. And frankly, I think there's some teamwork that goes on between, let's say, the planning agencies or regulatory authorities and the design team and the ownership team. If everybody's looking for success, is making sure there's an alignment of all of those values and moving the project forward.
Thank you all.
J.R. de Oliveira, thank you for your presentation. This project would also involve working closely with city staff on each phase of the project. Can you elaborate in your team's experience working with public sector partners?
Absolutely. And it's somewhat analogous to, our investment in working with stakeholders in the community. Each of us has worked in depth with public sector officials, and it's important to bring these people in early to avoid surprises and roadblocks. We're lucky that North River is already on the ground now with many of the key public sector partners here, great relationships there. On my side in past projects, I've worked with the DOT, the MTA, Department of City Planning, and other agencies, and recognize how important it is for those to fold together in order to make a project successful. And I'll pass it to the same folks. Doug, I mean, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, I would think I would echo a lot of what we stated before, but I do think we've built over the 5 years that I've been working specifically in Brick Bottom, I think a very productive relationship with all the departments at the city. And I think it's been, a healthy collaboration in terms of, understanding what the priorities are and kind of balancing that, I think, against community input, city objectives, and ultimately what we can achieve. I think Blake's comment about transparency and honesty is really important. I think, at the end of the day, it is about trying to find solutions that actually can be implemented. And I think, having those hard conversations about what we can achieve versus what we cannot achieve is really critical in building the trust early on.
Thank you.
Hi, Shelley Calder. So my question is around the shifting financial markets that we faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. It really highlighted the need for having resilient funding sources for new development. Can you provide us with some examples of how your team has weathered these financial shocks in the past? And then also, how do you think you're positioned for the future as well?
Chris, do you want to jump in on that one?
Shifting financial landscape? Well, I'm sorry to say, I'd like you to repeat the end of that question so I can specifically answer what you're.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Just on how we weather financial ups and downs and kind of our overall conservative approach to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when we started, I touched a little bit on just sort of our, more longer term generational approach to real estate. We typically try to keep, low leverage in the debt markets, and keep cash on hand. I will say, as I think we all are aware, part of the shifting landscape involved, rising construction costs and rising interest rates at a very, fast pace. I think we've all been, working hard to figure out how to make some of these projects pencil, going forward. And it really, I think, a lot of what we've been working with the city of Somerville on is, kind of delving into, potential public-private partnerships, and really, working hard to try to, build the appropriate capital stacks. And I think, and the last thing I'll say is the idea that we're looking at these projects with a long-term lens, I think, hopefully allows us to approach individual development projects, not with okay, we need a certain return on cost because we need to sell it in 2 years. Really kind of thinking about it, what does it mean for long-term cash flow and value creation. So I don't have the perfect answer for it for sure, but we're out there fighting every day.
Thank you. And I think I'm passing it to Lindsay.
So we have a question on here from the questions are different between the teams, but we have a question on here that Zach was meant to ask that he is not able to make it this evening. The question was around providing a more detailed site plan, which was presented as part of this. So I think we can go fairly quickly on this. I'm going to tweak this a little bit to just ask quickly. I want to make sure between the proposal initially submitted and then the site plan that was shown here in the program, just wanted to note, I noticed that the unit count is different. So I just wanted to really quickly, if we could take a second longer on the program, just to make sure that we note the number of units, et cetera. But then the second part of this question just being around how the density proposed, how it helps achieve density while still fitting within the neighborhood context. I think you spoke to that, but if there's anything else you want to add.
Maybe Blake, you want to take this one and we can fill in if there's further questions on program.
Yeah, well, I think can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. You're good. Okay. So it's that interesting balancing act. This is this is a very interesting and challenging site urbanistically, right? They've got Cobble Hill right across the street. It's got a particular character and history. And the scale of the buildings is relatively low. And it's an important neighborhood, and it's got its own sort of um, social binders, if you will, and identity, which is really interesting. On the south side of Washington Street, in this location of the site that we're talking about, it's probably a little more kind of open-ended. It's not clear, where the sort of focal point is in that area. I mean, I think the Cobble Hill Apartments is really interesting because it is a sort of an enclave unto itself, also. Um, but there tends to be a series of buildings and others that aren't necessarily reinforcing the street wall. And as urban designers, we believe very strongly in the idea of making street, the sort of primary conductor of civic business. And that means, all of us who walk and ride bikes and even drive cars feel like that we're in a street that has a kind of character and spatial presence. And that almost always ends up leading to vital and active sort of urban environments, and at least in our experience. I think, we tried to graduate the scale of these buildings in such a way that they could begin to sort of step down and connect to the lower six-story buildings on our side of the site. I think to achieve the density that we were being asked to look at, by concentrating some of that in a relatively small footprint at the corner of the site, it helps kind of alleviate an alternate strategy, which would be everything gets just a lot taller and broader and probably a little overwhelming. And we started out with schemes that were even taller, and then discovered that we could kind of begin to sort of tighten them up and look at some of the apartment mix, characteristics. But we're trying to hold on to a generous size, average unit size, and that leads to, a certain amount of square footage of net rentable area. And we're able to accommodate it in these footprints. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but at least from a designer's point of view, we're very sensitive to this idea of all, scales that are sort of commensurate with the size of the streets that they're in front of, while also recognizing that, there are distinct characteristics of the neighborhoods, particularly on the other side of Washington Street, that need to be taken into consideration when we imagine a development of this type.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm going to pass things over to Alex.
Hi guys, I'm Alex Taylor. Could you please provide some more detail on how this proposal would tie into the existing North River development in Brick Bottom, and other local developments?
We're going to let Doug take that.
I think the way we're looking at it is the opportunity to be part of the team working with the city to continue the evolution of these, brick bottom interbelt communities. And the quicker that we can create density, particularly residential, I think the quicker we're going to see opportunities to take advantage of other sites that I think are available for development in terms of commercial. And I think ultimately, working with the city to find the right balance of where residential wants to be and where commercial wants to be. We know that the city is eager to see more housing. We're excited to be a partner in the creation of that. And so I think there's an opportunity to participate with the city in thinking strategically about how all of these sites start to create a kind of a new urban center for the city of Somerville, not to replace anything, but to be another great place. I think that the city of Somerville can own and be proud of. And so I think it's a complement to, I think it's core to what we're trying to do and help be part of that evolution, the creation of that evolution. And it's, I think what we're saying is that if the city likes the way we're thinking about it, which is, driven by kind of what we believe is important as developers, architects, and owners, we think it's complementary to, what we're trying to focus on in our other interbelt sites and in our brick bottom partnership with the city. We struggle because in brick bottom, as you know, there's just not a lot of density. So like retail doesn't work. So we're subsidizing a cafe and we're going to put in a tap room, but it's really, they're very hard to get people interested. And so the more density we can get, the more the stuff that, makes the streetscape come alive. it is kind of a chicken or the egg, and so we're excited to see more, more density.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. The creating a neighborhood with its own character reminds me of something somebody said a while back in this committee, making comparison to or an extension of something like Union Square. It definitely has its own flavor as well.
And I think Washington Street, it's sort of today it should be a great boulevard because it's kind of a gateway street into Somerville from, the highway and when you're coming from, Sullivan Square. So like I think more projects like this creating to Blake's point, the urban, I'm having trouble with names tonight. Must be that Murray Fisher thing. The more we can create that urban edge and really make that a great street. I mean, the city's investing in the bike lanes and the bus stops and all those other things. I just think this is a great chance to start to fill it in a positive way.
Yeah, I just add to that. I mean, think about the last, call it 6 or 7 years of working, with Russ Preston and, the members of the community and the city of Somerville and sort of thinking about through the neighborhood planning process, which is ongoing, and how really the opportunity, you mentioned Union Square, Alex, and we're the opportunity for this whole area to become kind of like, almost a city center in a way, right? Assemblies happened and, there've been all these pockets and, if and when the McGrath Highway comes down, it does create a really cool opportunity to, kind of stitch together a spread out community, which is relatively small, when you're sort of looking down from 40,000 feet and we've been at it for a long time, and I was very excited to connect. I was standing out there today, actually looking at the 90 Washington site, but standing on the T station, and I was talking with a friend and a partner of ours who actually grew up in Charlestown, and I said, "Can you believe, you could stand on the inner belt side of this before we connected it, and it was actually shorter to walk to Sullivan Square T station than to go all the way out and around." And so I kind of think of this as adding to that, that sort of quilt, if you will, that, in the middle of Somerville.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Lindsay Allen here. I have a few questions that I'll kind of put into one. It's really around ground floor retail strategy. I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on your overall strategy, and if you could tell us a little bit more about your business outreach and how new uses would complement what's already existing along Washington Street, and also how you would encourage small local businesses versus chain retail grocers.
Absolutely. I think maybe Doug, since you started or you left off on density, maybe you want to add a little bit to what local residents would seek and sort of how we would approach local businesses. I'm happy to add to, but.
Yeah, no, I think our intent, I know that in the proposal, we threw in a couple kind of large credit or large recognized brands, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods. I think that's super aspirational, and we know there's a Trader Joe's and Assembly. I think the way we're thinking about it is what do the people within 15-minute walking radius need? This is not a drive-to destination. This is who's going to come here that it's relatively convenient. So we think about like all the retail, service retail, and other types of retail offerings, cultural offerings that people that within a 15-minute radius, walking radius of us would value because that's really the customer. And so I think it is more about they laughed at me. I said bodega. That's a New York thing. And they're like, no, we're not having a bodega. But like, a smaller market so that if I like, shit, I forgot my milk, I don't have to like get in my car and drive somewhere, or, a coffee shop, a gym, the things that just make life convenient and make you want to walk in your neighborhood. I think those, and we would love to explore first Somerville entrepreneurs in that arena that want a first or second or a third location. It's the way we've been looking at the Brick Bottom. We've been talking to a number of the restaurant operators. They all look at us like we have three heads when we say you want to open a restaurant here, but but I think that's our strategy. And then I think, programmatically other types of cultural uses, whether they're schools or galleries or workshops or maker spaces or, other things that we think could be complementary. This project's not going to live or die by the retail revenue. I think, it ideally wants to pay for itself, but it's not where it's not going to help us finance this thing. I think, the resi's got to make it work. But we do know that it's an amenity to the people that are going to live here, to the neighbors, and Frank, I'll call it the 15-minute radius.
Yeah, I kind of chuckle a little bit because our partner, Jeff Leerink, has continually challenged us over the years by saying, "Guys, we're selling goods from an empty wagon," and so really trying to figure out how to, you know, engage the community and get people excited about coming to, these relatively sparsely populated neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're making progress. The T-stop has been huge, and we actually have somebody that is very interested in coming to Somerville from another neighboring town that we've talked to the city about. We can't really reveal it, but I think that there is an opportunity to really think about the TOD nature of this thing and who that might attract. I mean, I say the 15-minute radius, but really the other opportunity is who rides the Green Line and who would get off and come to a really nice restaurant or an interesting gallery, or a school that might do adult education. I think these are all things we want to explore.
Great.
Yeah. You've answered my question, which was to ask to elaborate a little more on the retail, the sort of future of retail and the trends of where it's going. I wonder if I might go back to discussion a minute ago about the linkage or the kind of concept of linkage with the the Brick Bottom 200 inner belt. You have a rezoning case going. You were doing some talking with Mass Works about sort of an over the rails bridge, et cetera. Is there any kind of, concept that we might move forward thinking about of sort of hooking this site somehow back into the other and kind of the movement and how you get in and out of the subway station, directly? Is that kind of within the possibility of thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're touching on an issue around how do we stitch the district together. I mean, the commuter rail and the T are, inherently a moat that we have to deal with. And then, everything that's on the edge of that moat is not great today. So when we first started, we said, "Why? We've got to find a way to connect these neighborhoods because they're severed. It's like the old central artery." And so we worked with the city and Massport and the T to get the air rights for a potential bridge, which is one way that we thought we could connect Innerville and Brick Bottom and start to stitch those neighborhoods together. There's also the extension of Innerbelt Road, which is a big project that may never get funding, but that's a dead end that if it wasn't, it would really open up, I think, the Innerbelt area for more exciting development. I would say we're very interested in exploring I-Cubed and MassWorks funding, which is available for infrastructure for things that are about improving the pedestrian connectivity and access to public transportation as part of this project. I mean, I would say this site has pretty good access to the T up the ramp, and you're kind of there. And I think over time, as Joyce Street becomes more developed, less U-Haul containers, it's, you start to see people walking around. And my hope is that when McGrath comes down, people are toggling between Brick Bottom and Union Square, and maybe even, Washington Street becomes a more exciting street, and you're walking to Sullivan Square. And, you can imagine, I hate to say it, but it's probably 20 years, like this is going to be a radically different pedestrian experience. So I know that wasn't an answer, Bill, but I do think that you're thinking about the right questions. The T is not easy to work with, as you may or may not know. But I think we know the city's excited about pedestrian experience, and so I think there's a lot of work that can be done, and I think there's a lot of public funding that we could tap.
Look, thanks very much. Thanks to my colleagues on the CAC for allowing me to go off script there a minute. It's an interesting set of questions, I think.
I'm glad, Bill, that Doug answered it because when I was standing there today with that same guy from Charlestown, I said, and look, you could go over the top of the commuter rail and see Doug's like, no, don't talk about that. You know,
Thanks. I think that brings us to my question. I'm City Councilor Ben Wheeler. Thanks so much for this presentation, everyone, and for being here. My question is, are there possibilities to include a higher proportion of income restricted housing, or have some of the housing that's in that 20% be available at deeper levels of affordability than the 50%, 80%, 110 cycle? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Ben. I think we have heard the, strong desire for more affordability, and it's definitely something that we want to explore. So as we get deeper into the economics, we obviously need to make the numbers pencil. And I think we'll look to as much public resources as we can to help us with that. But I don't know, Doug or Chris, if anyone wants to build on that, but
Yeah, I would just say that, we're, and you probably have heard this, it's really difficult right now to make these things work because of the cost, because the cost of construction has not come down. So, you're dealing with a very high cost to deliver, and rents, we want to try to create, I call it, affordability across all product types. And so, balancing the market rate numbers with the affordable numbers to get a project that pencils, you end up with the market rate units being so expensive that it even exacerbates the affordability problem. And so, what we were excited about is the deal that I think the city struck on the Broadway project, where they did kind of an all affordable and then a 10% market rate. And it seemed to kind of create a unique opportunity. And I think that, I'm not saying that model, but that is an interesting precedent because it ended up getting the city 30%, on average, or in aggregate, 30% of the units I think were affordable. And so I think, building on what Sarah, we need to explore it. We have a consultant that we're working with right now on what are the available funds. I mean, there's city, state, and federal dollars that we're all chasing. And we're going to use every possibility we can to do that. And I think the more, counselor, the more public funding, the more affordability we can create. There is a minimum threshold. I know Chris talked about long-term holding. There is a kind of a minimum threshold of return on cost that you can't get the construction financing. And that will be our bottom threshold. It'll be lower than some of the institutional investors that have more tighter obligations on their investments. And I think, back to transparency, I think this is a project that's going to need ultimate financial transparency because I think I think to get as much out of it for the city, we're going to need to work in a kind of an open book way to talk about how to underwrite the aspirations and get the most out of it. And
I would just add to that, I mean, Doug, you mentioned a couple of projects locally, and we there are obviously a number of real estate companies out there, and you kind of look at it and say, "Oh, well, are we competitors?" Actually, no. A lot of us are friends, and I think one of the unique things about real estate is what somebody else does next door can be quite helpful to what you do in the future. And so I think we've been really sitting with our colleagues who are developing, potentially in Somerville and in other locations, and trying to, take pages out of people's, book. There's a project in Revere that's going ahead at Suffolk Downs. That's very ambitious. And there were a lot of different, contributors to that. And so I think, everybody knows what the objectives are, and we know the objectives of, affordable housing as well. And we did just have a ribbon cutting up in Waterville, Maine, a rehabbed mill building, which was an all affordable project. And as Doug, mentions, this is the type of project that's just going to need ultimate financial transparency. And that project in Waterville it was a long time in the making, faced all the same challenges that we've highlighted, today. But it really was a collaboration and some, a lot of financial transparency. And we got to a ribbon cutting in Waterville, not Somerville. So we can do it here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. That is our final question, and want to make sure we're, spending a fairly equal amount of time between the interviews this evening. So are there any kind of final comments, Sarah, Marie?
No, we just want to thank you so much and just reiterate how enthusiastic we are about this opportunity. It's a great piece of land and a great city. So we'd be thrilled to see it happen.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you so much for joining this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, all.
All right. Ben, are all the development people, have they signed off?
I mean, we're still in open session, so it's okay.
Yeah.
The last few, well, I guess first off, 2 hours. Thank you everyone for keeping with it, and thank you everyone for asking questions. Just want to give a quick note for next time. So we're working currently on a summary of the feedback that y'all provided on the 2 proposals for the first session. So then we'll meet next Tuesday. We will share that summary ahead of time. And then we'll talk about it. We'll update it based on any feedback that you have to the interviews this evening, and also just making sure you feel like it represents accurately what we discussed. I'm going to reach out also to the teams to see if we can get a copy of the presentation. I apologize. I should have had that already. But especially given some of the site plan, et cetera, that's included in the North River Leering proposal, I think that would be helpful to have to reference.
I took screenshots of all of them if people want me to share them in the group.
There we go. Perfect.
Pretty pictures.
Yeah. That's all I have to add from my end, though.
All right. All right. I'm going to poll each member present about adjourning. And again, thank you all for the marathon session. You were great with the questions that flowed very nicely. I appreciate your hard work and preparation. So, Bill Mahaney, do you approve adjournment?
Yes, approve.
Thank you. J.R. D'Oliveira, do you approve adjournment?
Approved.
Bill Valletta, do you approve adjournment?
I do. This is a good meeting.
Thank you. Counselor Wheeler, do you approve adjournment?
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Lindsay Allen, do you approve adjournment?
Approve. Thanks.
Thank you. Paolo DeFabio, do you approve adjournment?
I got a Celtics game to watch, Ted. Approved.
Alex Taylor, do you approve adjournment?
I do, yeah.
Thank you. Shelley Calder, do you approve adjournment?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. We will see you on the 5th. Good night.
Good night. Bruins, Celtics,
Thanks all.
Have a good night.